In this example, we are going to learn how to evaluate piecewise functions. Now, a piecewise function is just a function that's broken up into multiple pieces. If we look at the function itself, we've got three different lines representing those three different pieces. Now, this first section of the function only happens when x is less than -2. That's why we have this inequality here. The second function only happens between the x values of -2 and +4. And then the third function only happens when x is larger than 6. So those inequalities on this right side here help us to understand where each piece of that function happens. So when I start to evaluate these x values here in the function, that helps me to know which one to use. So if I'm looking at that first piece of the function, it's asking me to evaluate here on part A, f of -3. Well, that means I need to put a -3 into my function. So I'm going to come over here to these inequalities and figure out which one of these functions does that work in. It's going to work in this first one because -3 is less than -2. So in knowing that, I can go ahead and say f of -3 is going to be 2 multiplied by the -3 and then plus 4. So I'm going to use that top function to help me evaluate that. And then I can just do the math. 2 times -3 is -6, plus 4 is -2. So that would be the output for f of -3. If I'm looking at part B there, f of 1. So x value of 1 is going to land in the second inequality because it's between -2 and +4. So I'm going to look at that function. Well, this function here of 5 just means that anywhere on that function, my y value is going to equal 5. So regardless of what the x is, this one here is just 5. There's nothing I can do to plug it in because there's no x to plug it into. And the third one here, f of 7. 7 fits inside this last inequality of x is greater than 6. So I'm going to plug it into my x squared. So if I plug that in, I get 7 raised to the second power, which is 49. So that would be my output for that third one. Now, there is a possibility if these pieces of the domain don't line up, kind of like they do here, that I could try to evaluate something and it doesn't work. Because if I try to, let's say, evaluate the function when x is equal to 5, well, 5 isn't less than 4, so it can't fit into the second piece of the function. But 5 isn't greater than 6, so it doesn't fall into the third piece of the function. And it's definitely not less than -2, so it's not going to fall into the first piece of the function. So this one I would have to say is undefined. And there is no value for f of 5. So there are times where we get these x values that don't fall in the graph because there's a break in the graph, and that's okay. But whatever that x value is, we want to look and see which inequality it falls into, and based off that inequality, we can then evaluate that piece of the function with the specified x value.